Hello everyone, welcome back. This is the usual stream for writing a programming language in Rust. Apologies for the brief issues with the webcam, but we're back online again. So today we're in the middle of another in a sequence of refactorings that for the most part won't really change a huge pile and possibly could have been skipped, but it is probably one of the last ones, I hope, before we finish off this language. And in theory it does make the data representation a little more logical and maybe a little more aligned with the syntax or semantics of the language that we're putting into place here. So with that said, I had been in the middle of a number of changes last time, so I'm wanting to just round those off. I believe it hadn't been, I've done a little bit of work in the meantime, but gone back to where I left off with the stream. And I don't think there's a huge amount left in terms of getting the project running and passing tests again. But there are probably a lot of changes that I'll be making to just round out the work and simplify it and things like that. So I'm just going to dive right in. As is often the case with these refactoring sessions, there probably isn't going to be a huge amount of talking because it's really just hopping through errors and getting those sorted. But yeah, hopefully we'll get on to something slightly more interesting shortly enough. So I'll just jump into our eval module, and we have value clone here after a deref. Now I also have a second branch that I created just before today's stream to keep track of the changes that I made in kind of a crib sheet format, I would say. So I'll be able to use that as a reference. So yes, I believe at the moment I have deref used in a couple of places, and all of those got replaced with just direct uses of v.v. Oh, and that's all the changes fixed. Okay, so the issues that I was seeing before were actually just linting suggestions. So we can possibly simplify a lot of this. So we can do that. And I believe there were also some tests added in to the work in progress branch as well. So what I might do is check those out. Yeah, so we have a couple of new tests here, list var quality and object var quality, and something that will what is causing those errors, I wonder. I didn't change much. Oh, it's the new tests, and that's precisely why I added those tests in as well. Oh, and this is, well, the third test is for source change, so that's to do with another change that I made in the other branch, but the first two of these are would block errors, I believe, caused by the try locks. And essentially what was happening here was, in my new implementation of list and object equality, if we take a look at that, we can see that we're doing a dereference on the source list and the target list. Well, that's actually kind of all right, the checking the lengths. Well, no, it wouldn't actually be, because we're doing a mutex lock here and then a mutex lock on the right hand side. But if those happen to be the same value, then that's problematic, because we then have two references to the same mutex and we're trying to unlock it in both places at the same time. Now, something that was so I was able to resolve this using a very nice function. Let me see. Where was this defined? Source value. That is defined on reference counted values, called pointer equal, which makes sense for it to be defined, but I wasn't sure would it actually exist. But essentially what we're able to do with this is basically compare two reference counted objects. They're both pointers, and arc provides pointer equal to check are two arc pointers the same, are they the same pointer. And that also allows us to basically verify, before we even get to the mutexes, we can verify whether two pointers that we have are pointing to the same item. And if they are, then we can say they're equal without actually checking their values. Because if we continue and attempt to check those values when they are in fact equal, then that will give us a deadlock in the case of references. So let's go ahead and use our new, I think I'd call it ref equal maybe, but let's see. Yeah, ref equal. Yeah, so those are passing now. And then the last piece is, I believe it's just to do with making sure that the source is passed correctly when we're doing a dereference based on, what was it again? We're doing a deref, I believe, based on indexing. So I believe it's working for property access. And we can get rid of all these print lines as well. So again, I might take a look at what I'm doing in this other branch. So let's see. If we take a look at bind, yeah, so we're replacing that with deref, and we're also, yeah, so deref is using the new approach. Now I'm going to replace these back with locks and then convert them to try locks in a subsequent PR or commit rather, just to keep the changes simple. And oh yes, I defined, even though I'm not sure how beneficial it will be, but I defined a helper method that just performs the assignment in scopes. Yeah, so we have this. Why didn't that grab everything? And the intention, at least, is that if setting of values needs to be done and refactored, then it can all be done in one place. So that didn't fix it there. So there are probably a couple of different things to resolve. And this is one of the nice things about some of these refactorings, is that I have been able to reduce the number of clones that are being performed in various parts of the code base. I'm sure that's probably changed in the new version, but maybe not yet at least. I'll just tidy up some of these easy fixes. Oh, and I also want to bump the version. So this is not defined. Yeah, I guess I'll just go through each of the improvements that I made separately, and eventually I'll hit the fix that got made. So let's start off with value. Oh, and I'll remove some of these print lines as well. So one thing that I did with the new changes, which was, I think, quite nice. Well, I really just did a more, I guess, sensible rename of some of the value types. So before I was like, okay, if I have a function with an arcref or an arcmutex and it's pointing to another, the actual function, what are going to be the names of the structs, and so the arcmutex is now going to be called a function ref, and then the thing inside that's being pointed to is the function, which to me makes so much sense. Now I'm like, why didn't I think of it beforehand? And that will be applied as well to list an object. But I think because of how the refactoring may evolve, even those ref suffixes may not be necessary anymore as well. But let's go ahead and just apply it first. So it looks like that wasn't actually used anywhere. And it's actually func that's being used. And so I'll probably have to rename func t in various places. And I'm also going to do the same with object and list, where they're going to be list ref and object ref. So list is now going to be the thing that gets pointed to, and the pointer type is going to be list ref. And now we could abstract this and make it arcmutex t, but yeah, so why am I not doing that? Well, first of all, the naming and even if it doesn't, even if I'm not importing it, I feel like to people that are used to reading Rust, it could be, and I'm not sure how many people are going to be reading this code base in general, but it could be confusing for that reason. So I'm going to keep the names distinct for the moment. There is, I mean, we save a little bit of duplication, but sometimes just keeping things simple is, and like minimizing abstractions is more useful overall anyway. And what do I have for these actually? Now I may be shooting myself in the foot slightly. With trying to rename too many things at the same time, but we'll give it a go anyway. And so all the existing references to object and list should be list ref and object ref instead. And it seems like there aren't too many, at least. So all these calls to new object 2 and new list 2 will probably need to be changed, and that's in mod as well. Yeah, and this is something that I've changed as well is, oh yeah, so even though I changed a lot of things to list ref, in theory I should be updating this as well. However, I'm actually going to modify this to a vector of valref with source, because we don't necessarily need or want the argument list to the function is going to be new and owned by the function anyway, so it kind of makes sense to define those arguments as the as a vector directly. Did I change built-in function? Yes, I did. I changed it to a vector of valref with source as well. Now, I'll also be renaming a number of these too. that. And finally, down here we do that. And we still haven't resolved that new error. So let's go into type functions and start applying these changes. Do I still need B-tree map? So this was something nice that I found out as well, although this might need to be changed. But because object is type alias for the B-tree map, we can perform object from directly, which is quite nice. And it also means we can get rid of the B-tree map. So next on the list we'll hop into bind. And we have a little adjustment to make on chars, so we'll actually remove the type there and the arc mutex, and instead put that arc mutex down here. And it'll probably be beneficial to create a constructor for arc mutexing. Let's try all that. Then we're back to eval mod again. I don't love importing arc mutex, but it should be possible to remove it from a lot of spots. And I'll rename dref2 to just dref, because I believe all references to the original dref have been removed. Yes, and I believe we don't need to do any more cloning around here, because that was necessary when both values being passed into the binary operation function were essentially reference values, whereas now most of the values, especially the primitive ones, are going to be direct values and not references, and we're only going to need to dereference basically just lists, I believe, for concatenation. But that allows us to simplify some of these operations. And in fact, clone value, I believe, can be removed entirely and replaced with just .v. should I call these? Like props ref. To be explicit, although it's kind of venturing into the territory of naming things based on their types, which can be a bit problematic because it adds a lot of noise as well, but maybe it would be useful. I can take a look at that later anyway. And actually I'll look for other usages of try lock. And I believe this was something that could be ref with no source. Yeah, that could be reverted. Oh, this could be the spot that was causing problems. So first off, yeah, so we were saying a new value with no source there, but this can actually just return the value directly. Yeah. Yeah, I think I just shuffled around the ordering of this just to fit things onto one line. Yeah, that's that issue resolved. So let's see what other bits need to get resolved. Yeah, lots of spots where values can just be taken directly, again, because we're no longer doing all this reference cloning around the place. Those imports be removed from? Oh nice, those can be removed. funnily enough, those were the changes that were showing up here as well. So the linter was telling us at the same time as we would have been encountering it. In our diff. Maybe I'll keep that the way it was. I feel like it was slightly tighter. and some of these are kind of duplicating functionality, so I'll need to remove some of them. Yeah, and I don't think funcref is actually used anywhere, so like I did in the other file, I can just replace that with arcmutex. Brings us about up to date with the changes I had made in the interim. But with that said, there is a nice bit of cleanup still to be done. So what are some of the things that I want to do? So I've simplified my dereference. Let me see. In bind objects, I made a note. That's an object ref. Yeah, that's what I want. And bind range index. Is there a potential for deadlock down here? Quite possibly, because let's see, where did I put my new tests? So I won't be putting them in there, but let's see. Variables range index assign. Okay, so that's how it's formatted. I actually couldn't remember how it was implemented in this language. This should essentially be a no-op, but I have a feeling that is no-op the right term? Yeah, it's Googleable anyway. Now let's see if we'll get an error for wood block Yeah. Oh, no. Let's try that instead with the actual variable name. Okay, that worked alright. A little surprised. Should I be? Maybe, because that's creating a new variable. Let's try this. So because the right hand side was being evaluated to a separate expression, can't bind, so that would need to be 0, 4. Yeah, would block. So that's something else to be resolved. How to fix that? I think the simplest would also simplify part of something that I noticed earlier as well, which was that we're kind of redundantly creating this arc mutex up here. So instead of that, what we could do is deref the right hand side and clone it. Now I might need to extract that because the lifetime might not be long enough. And that'll probably need to, or be recommended to change to that. And that means this will need to be changed to that. Let's try. Okay, maybe I'm doing too many things at the same time, so let's slow it all down a little bit. That's still... Oh, because potentially we're binding for the duration of the call. Whereas if we do this, it should clone the items and then release that immediately. Yes, nice one. And that now removes our need for arc mutex in this file, which is very nice too. Oh yeah, and now it is recommending me to do that. But now I need to give an exact type to the characters. Nice one. So what is left to be done? There are a couple of... In fact, I might even put this into its own branch. Because there are a few related changes to be made at the same, more or less the same time. So first of all, let's take a look. Are there many places where we're still using ArcMutex? So there are in that file. None there, none there. Scope stack, that's kind of fine because it's self-contained. And same in here. Yeah, so that's actually kind of fine. Now, the only thing is valref is no longer really a value reference, but again, I'm going to put this onto its own branch and do the rename on that branch as well. And so we also don't want to commit the try locks just yet. And we have this duplication, so we have valref with source, valref with no source, and this is also val. Oh. So let's do it like that. So for this change, yeah, we want to undo the try locks. That's all fine. Let's see, assert ergs. Can that be put onto one line? It can, because we removed the use of vec. Yeah, this really does simplify a lot of things, this change. And I actually prefer the B-tree version of this, and to keep that in place. just gonna give it a stupid type and see what Rust tells me the type is. Let's try that. Hi, welcome to the channel. So I'm writing a programming language in Rust. So it's mostly a research-based language for playing around with different programming language ideas, but with a view to, in future, writing an alternative for Bash programming. So that's the aim at the moment. Thanks for joining. So let's try this instead. Okay, it's looking like I'm having to figure out these types myself instead. And that would probably be an object here. Object ref. And I think in general it's object ref and list ref that are imported, so those can be potentially replaced as well. Oh no. No, I'll need to figure that out. What is the type of that? Maybe this? Yeah, it doesn't have a size known at compile time. I guess what I can do that should give me the type. So found an array of one element. Okay, so that would kind of suggest that that's correct. Can I do it like that? No, it can't be done with a slice. It nearly has to be a literal. Let me see. So I guess I can turn it into an iterator. Can I do that? Oops. Oh, from iter. Let's try that. Can I do iterator? No. Yeah, this is problematic because it's... Oh, maybe if I do actually change it to a vector, because that will be owned. Let's try that. Okay, finally. That was only chaotic. Unneeded return. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Closing parentheses. And now object is no longer needed. Is list still needed? I don't think so, because that should be replaced with valref with source. So I think that can be removed. Okay, so that should be one of the last changes that's needed here. So we have some commented out code which we can remove. Yeah, bind. And I guess we'll perform scope set in those new places as well. And for props, that's an interesting one. I don't really like having the tri-lock there on its own, but we might be kind of limited. Maybe we could do something. Like that. Will that give us a panic? Yeah, it will. Because this lock is going to be held for the duration of the if else, but we only want it to be held during the if. And the reason to avoid having try lockout here is it would be nice to abstract it into or centralize in the macro, so that if we want to change the mechanics, we only need to update that in one place. Yeah, like we have a couple of options here. We could return early, and then outside we could do the insert, or else we could return a boolean from it. But all of these approaches are kinda not the nicest. I guess this is kinda the best one. Yeah, and so that one's fine, and we'll go ahead and copy that below as well. that's all passing now. We have a deref there, that's all fine. That one we've replaced. Yeah, stuff is looking fairly alright. Mutable deref can be removed. In fact, yeah, that's all good. That could probably be turned into an if-let. But I'm suspicious that Clippy isn't telling me that that's alright. So we'll see if there's a reason why it isn't giving that suggestion. No, that seems to be alright. Oh, that's probably why I didn't do it before. No. Can I do that? No, I don't think I want to. If I remove that, does it do what I want? Or will I get a lifetime issue? Oh yeah, it's because... Oh, I'm not fully sure, but it's fine the way it is now anyway. lots of clones being removed as well, which is really nice, and lots of dereferences not needed anymore because the values are being used directly, which is quite cool, I think. And again, aligns well with what one would logically consider regarding the semantics of the language. Some commented out code here. Good reminder. Now there's also a try lock there, but that's not to do with our usual try lock. Cool, so that is more or less it in terms of this commit. Oh, no, I forgot to actually undo the try lock stuff. So at least now we only have a couple of places to update. Valmod bind and scope. Cool. So we did the deadlock check on bind range. We want to reinstate. Well, first of all, I want to rename valref with source to actually be just value with source, and I'll actually call it, I think, sourced value. Or value pair. I think I've done this decision making dance before. to the channel. So a lot of code reduction has been happening just as a result of renaming that. So it might be possible for different areas to be contracted onto one line. Inbuilt garbage collection. It's a good question, and I haven't dived too much into it yet. My understanding of what's likely going to happen in the runtime is that because all variables are reference counted, and Rust, I believe, does zero overhead garbage collection, so that when the end of a scope is reached, if a reference counted item drops to 0 references, then it should be reclaimed automatically, I guess. But I actually haven't dug too deeply into it. My assumption is that I will have to implement garbage collection at some stage, but it's also something that I've been putting off for a good while. Yeah, exactly. So all the variables in general, especially object and list references at this point, are going to be, well, values in general, I believe, are going to reap the benefits of Rust's zero overhead allocation, so that if it's a raw value, it probably will get just popped off the stack or something like that when the end of a scope gets reached. But for what's it called, the objects and lists and things like that, yeah, I would be using reference counting for those, and presumably I'd get a lot of that functionality for free due to my use of Arc. But again, it's a level of abstraction that I'm still wrapping my head around, and would probably need to actually go through it with a pen and paper to figure out what's actually going on under the hood. So I've been kind of putting it off a bit, but that should be something interesting that I'll be taking on and diving into a bit more at some stage. Thanks for the question. Yeah, that's also a good question. So this is the middle of a refactoring, which is one of a number of refactorings I've done just for the primitive value type in the language, because there have been various points in different feature implementations, particularly operator assignment or operation, the operation assignment shorthand for example, incrementing variables, where I've realized that the way I've been representing values, while it works, it could potentially be more aligned with the semantics of the language. So basically, until now, I was mostly passing around this idea of a valref with source, which was essentially a pointer to a value. So even the primitive values that were going into variables, you never actually had the value itself. It was always a reference to a value. And all the tests were passing, and that was all working fine. But there were some parts where it felt like it was a bit too much abstraction, like that level of indirection for even primitive values. So today I've really just been refactoring the fundamental value type of the language, and been doing a little bit of cleanup based on that as well. And the idea is for today's stream to get that wrapped up finally, and then implement operator assignment, which is actually the last feature more or less that I'll be doing on this language. There'll be a few other little improvements, such as I think semicolon eliding, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but dropping semicolon from statements. And there was another thing that came to my head as I was writing, as I was just kind of doing the refactoring today. I'll actually have to try and remember what I was thinking, but for the most part the language will be complete at that point, and then I'll be moving on to another language that's based on this one. Yeah, exactly. So I actually did a previous implementation of this language in a streaming series before, where I was essentially not doing tests as I went along, and I was just adding features all the time. And yeah, please feel free to use it for experimentation, to check it out. It comes with a Docker environment as well, so it should be fairly easy to get it up and running. And I've tried to make sure that every commit that it builds and passes all tests. So in theory, it should all hopefully work out of the box. But if there are any problems with it, please feel free to raise an issue on the GitHub or anything like that. I also have been notified that I need to fix the Discord links in the YouTube playlist as well. So once I've those sorted out, you'll be able to join the Discord as well to potentially discuss it more. But yeah, please feel free and let me know how you get on with it. So with that all said, let's go back to scope, and we still have valref with source here, so let's simplify that. And that's more or less it, I believe. Yeah, that's the thing. There are so many moving parts, and you know, it is very much a hobby kind of a thing as well. So my default is probably to just do all this stuff on my own and not even think about narrating and things like that. But the streaming part is fun too, so I do get a bit of a kick out of that. Even though it probably adds to the amount of time that gets taken to implement things. But yeah, that's all part of the fun too. And actually I'm just going to go through all of these again just to make sure that my imports are in the correct order. These are things that ideally I'd be using a linter for. Forgetting alphabetical order at this point. But the default linter that people use for Rust, I think it's Rust Funct. I wouldn't necessarily be in agreement of all the rules that they impose on it and the default formatting that gets run, so I tend to do this stuff by hand, unfortunately. Possibly a little bit silly, but that is the, I guess, benefit of open source. You can do it the way you like. Yeah, it's a really good point, and not having too many viewers, and like you say, not trying to. I mean, I wouldn't have a big problem with clickbaity things these days. It's not something I necessarily do myself, but yeah, at least my take on it is this is something I'd be doing anyway. I'm not in the past. I definitely would have gotten caught up in, oh, I want to build an audience. I want, if I'm going to be putting this out there, I want people to be interested and get involved and things like that. Whereas these days, again, it's more, what do they call it, those intrinsic motivations. So this is something that I want to do anyway, and if people get value out of it, then that's great, that's a bonus. Oh, that's not disturbing at all. Thanks very much for the questions. Oh, and Clippy, absolutely. Clippy is one that I do use and I think it is magical what it can do. I guess it's similar to, mostly I use Go, so I would probably compare it to different Go linters and Go vet and things like that. But the optimizations and simplifications that Cargo is able, or Clippy is able to suggest, I think are absolutely fantastic. And very rarely, yeah, I don't think I've really gotten a case in a long time where the Clippy suggestion actually breaks the code and I then have to work around the suggestions. But for me, coming back to the question about wrist pain, so I actually have a keyboard specifically for addressing wrist pain. So it's the Kinesis Advantage 2. I'm not sure how beneficial it has been. I mean, I don't get wrist pain so much these days while I've been using it, but also I have been doing, there are other things that I've also been doing to address that. I mean, the probably the biggest thing that I don't do these days to address the wrist pain is just not doing this thing where I sit up in bed like this and go on my laptop scrunched up with my hands like claws. And so that's probably been the thing that's made the biggest impact. But and I also use a Dvorak layout, so there are lots of these little things I've been doing to improve my typing, and actually learning Vim in particular with the Dvorak layout and with the Kinesis was I've always put like these big hurdles in front of myself to address my wrist pain, but thankfully it hasn't been an issue in quite a while. This was definitely an investment for me, the Kinesis, but it's also, it's such a big part of my life that it's worth the investment. And yeah, posture is a big important thing to focus on. Hi Ellie B, welcome to the channel. Yeah, it's interesting. Dvorak is definitely, Dvorak is challenging on its own. I would say that it was easier for me to learn Dvorak than it was to learn QWERTY touch typing, because coming to touch typing first, that was one of the it sounds so dramatic, but it was one of the most difficult things I've had to learn. I feel that and driving, just the dexterity involved and the focus. Then moving to Dvorak wasn't as difficult as that, but was still very difficult. And then trying to introduce it into Vim, because you also have different approaches with Vim, and it's not always clear which one you should go with, because there's the option that I've seen before where people remap Vim in such a way that you're using Dvorak, but the positions of the shortcuts are the way they are with QWERTY. So if you already have your muscle memory for QWERTY, you can keep that, but then you're using Dvorak for your actual typing and things like that. I decided to just learn the new mapping so that even if I pull up Vim on someone else's laptop and swap over to Dvorak, then I'm actually, it's the same thing. I'm as comfortable. Then I don't have to install any extra plugins to do the remapping or anything like that. But it is definitely a challenge. Oh yeah, Colmac is interesting as well. I said that was probably a step too far for me. I was like, I was tempted to learn it, but I was like, no, this is too much of a rabbit hole for me. And as well, what I always get, or the point that I get to a lot of the time as well, is I just want to code at the end of the day. Dvorak helped with my wrist pain, and split keyboards helped with that as well. But at the end of the day, I don't want to configure things. I don't want to learn new layouts and stuff. I just want to start writing code and be able to compile it, see the results, and just get into that loop. And yeah, going back to QWERTY because of Vim is very relatable. So I'm just gonna go ahead and commit these changes. So this was rename valref with source to sourced value. And where does that leave us? So I guess I will, after I merge this, I think I'll go back to using try locks instead of locks. I wanted to move deref into value. I'll take a look at how easy or difficult that is. And arcmutex function, I don't really need that anymore. And there's a possibility of maybe renaming variables based on whether they're dereferenced or not. So we'll take a look at that. So first of all, I'm going to see, can I move deref into value? So let's try that. And I'll just compile that first, and then I'll visit the first one, which will probably say deref doesn't exist. So we'll see where that says it. 1193. That's interesting. It starts at basically the last reference and kind of goes up the file and tells you what the latest one is first. So maybe do macros evaluate in reverse order? That's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't think it makes too much of a difference, but just interesting to think. 90 words per minute, that's so impressive. And yeah, switching between them. I can switch between Dvorak and QWERTY. I'm definitely not that fast with QWERTY though. I mean, it feels like if I'm ever going to be working on a new computer for any space of time, then I'm probably going to try and add Dvorak to it, just because I'm so much faster with it. And like, there was a time where I was probably similar speeds, but I just use Dvorak all the time these days. So it's yeah, it's my daily driver at this point. Yeah, so thanks for the question. So the language is aimed at being just a research language, essentially. So it's essentially going to have a core of fairly standard programming language mechanics that are going to be familiar from most modern languages. So you're going to have, in particular, pattern-based destructuring and things like that. And so it's going to be a fairly, I guess, non-controversial set of language features. But that's because the language itself isn't meant to be used for anything practical as such. It's more to be used as a test bed for different language features and building on top of. So there's another language that I really want to get to, which will be built on top of this language. So this language is called Seed. I'm hoping to create a language called Ash, which is intended to be an alternative to Bash scripting, which keeps the ergonomics of Bash, but uses constructs that are maybe a bit more comfortable and familiar to programmers, and also handles edge cases a little more, I would say, just smoothly in general. And yeah, I suppose it does. Now, the pattern matching that I have is fairly limited. It wouldn't be as comprehensive as, because I don't have things like, for example, enums, or what are they called? Not record types, but I guess disjoint unions in the language. It's just the usual combination of JSON types, which is object list, int string, bool, and that's probably it, and null. So the need for pattern matching isn't as strong here, but it's a work in progress. The semantics and nature of the language is surely going to evolve as I work through it and work with it. So with this said, I'm needing to check, how do I import? Oh, first of all, I don't think I'm actually importing value in the first place, so that would probably help. So let's give this a go first before I start searching. And previous definition of the module. Okay, so I don't need to. Okay, so I can just use it as is. Unused macro definition. So how do I? So let's try macro use. And this is essentially the reason why I wasn't handling macro use before as well, or why I wasn't sharing macros across. Oh, so I don't actually need the prefix there. Yeah, that's why I wasn't sharing macros across different files before, because I wasn't actually sure how exactly to do that. So can I do the same here? I just remove deref and it's just going to figure it out like magic. Yeah, the apologies for that, LEB. So it's saying Automod has held a message for swearing, but I don't see. It seems to have highlighted LMAO. I'm not sure what that's about. Yeah, apologies for that. I guess the Automod is a bit strict in its own way, though I don't fully understand the reason why. But you were saying you opened Twitch while cooking breakfast because you were thinking of streaming your own compiler development this morning. That's such a coincidence. What kind of compiler are you working on? And deref isn't. Oh no, that's the file that's to find it. So I think that should be it again. Try Bacon for the right hand panel. Automated recompiling on file change. Cargo Bacon. No, actually, like all I'm doing is I just use ENTR, and I haven't actually heard of Bacon. Is it? I guess it's kind of optimized for incremental recompiles, although Rust kind of recompiles it incrementally anyway, right? Okay, that's very interesting. I must take a look at that. Oh, and it runs as a separate script, because that's something that I'm interested in as well. Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at that. Thanks very much for the suggestion. That could be really helpful. I tend to once I have something working, I tend not to modify it too much for a long time, so I can be a bit oblivious to actual potential improvements in my environment. So that's well appreciated. Thank you. So let's see, macro use. I have added that on the import. So what's going on? And it is defined in value, right? Yeah. Well, that's kind of, well, I wouldn't say that anyone, like, I'm sure other people are more disciplined than me, but I've definitely gotten caught down rabbit holes, especially when it comes to Linux. I mean, there's so much you can configure. I remember back in college, I'd be setting up my Xmonad configuration, and all my different tools had to be configured properly just the way I like it. Whereas these days, even Vim at the moment, like, I've been getting into NeoVim a little bit more, but my Vim setup is really just the key bindings that I like and a file tree explorer, and that's basically it. I feel like sometimes even getting into plugins too much is just so distracting as well, and the more time I spend configuring, the more time I spend not coding. So, and that's really the thing that I love. So yeah, it's dangerous. These kind of rabbit holes that you can get stuck in. But I'm still not following this issue with macro use. Maybe I hardly need to import it like that. Yeah, I couldn't find the import. But why is that not working? Can't find macro deref in this scope. Could this be a thing for ChatGPT to help with? And it's so strange as well because, because it's working for the other one, but then the other file, but then the other file is importing it in a slightly different way, it seems like. So let's see. Algebraic data types, nice. I I haven't implemented them in my language, but I do really like algebraic data types, so I should probably. And type class is nice. Want to make it more focused around the idea of talking to a program in the right language makes problem solving easier. So I not make writing those languages as easy as possible. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think it can be nice to even just explore those ideas in the context of writing a language as well. Sometimes the idea you start off with changes so much as you actually implement it. Oh, interesting. Ah, I didn't know about that. So let's give macro use only has an effect on extern crate. Oh, I didn't see that before. But let's see, does this do anything? Nope. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Oh, you can actually import it like that. I'm fairly sure I'm using 2018 or later. No deref in a val value. Oh, I'm not dealing with the module hierarchy. I find like I'm sure it is designed to perfection. I know that Rust thinks these, and the committee behind Rust thinks these things out so thoroughly, but I find it such a head wreck. I do not deal with the module hierarchy using the macro. Should be able to use it like that. Double check the macro name and scope, verify it's properly exported. Let's try this again. So now that I've imported it like that, do I need to export it still? Also, it gets defined at the root of the crate. That is so bizarre. Yeah, okay. Yeah, as can probably be seen quite evidently, I do not mess with the module system in Rust. It just, my brain just does not compute that. Yeah, I probably need to install Claude on this project at some point and just say, okay, tell me how to lay out the modules, tell me what files to make, tell me where to put everything, and I'll just do it. You know, I don't need to provide executive input. I don't need to have ownership over where the files are put. Just tell me what needs to be done and where stuff needs to be put, and I will just do it. Okay, part of this is probably from me putting most of the eval code into the mod.rs file. Whereas if I put it into, I'm not sure where else I would even put it, eval.rs, evalprog.rs. I should probably do that in another commit as well. Cool, so we've that done. Will we try moving this into mod? I feel like that could be a disaster. Oh, have I changed my keyboard layout somehow? How did I do that? Was it this? I'm not quite sure. What was I pressing a second ago? Oh well. So I want to import it into bind. And I guess I'll do that. Or do I even need it? Was that working before? Oh, it's not fully duplicated. Interesting. I guess I'll just change the comment on that then. So that's deref moved. So when I merge the branch, I'm going to update the locks, and I'm going to move values out of mod.rs, I think. So let's go go ahead and check out main. Oh, and I don't want, yeah, I want it to be so. I also, in addition to the changes, I want to bump the cargo information as part of the merge. So that's gone well. I'm going to push that before I do anything else. And then I'm going to refactor lock. So that's in built-ins functions. Oh, that should have been deduplicated as well. Oops. I don't get that at all. I don't understand why I'm getting deref from that spot. I mean, I could look into it, but I am so very lazy. I mean, yeah, I just don't get it. Okay, so we'll do a cargo bump there as well. Show the problem. So, like, it's not really a problem. I just don't understand why I import macros like this. Why it's going to the root of the. To be honest, it's a whole thing of I just don't understand Rust's macro hierarchy, and I've looked into it before. I've done little example projects to work through it and figure it out, and then I understood it for a while, and then I leave it and I come back to it and I'm like, what is going on here? So it's not something problematic as such. It's just, yeah, at this point I just try to do something, get the compiler to tell me what's going wrong and fudge it through. Which admittedly isn't always the ideal approach, but it is what it is. It's fine. So with that done, now there should be even fewer spots to update. So there's value and, yeah, basically just value and scope. And even those, I could possibly simplify as well, but you know what, it's fine. let's try that. And I wouldn't be expecting any changes here. So this is something that would need to be changed for production purposes, but for research purposes it's very useful to be able to just panic when there would be a deadlock, so that it makes things a lot easier to debug. So with that all done, I'm finally back to somewhat square one in terms of the mechanics of the language. It's just working fine, all the tests are passing. So what needs to be done next? So it'll finally be the case of implementing opassign. And so instead of implementing it, I don't know which way I was wanting to implement it, but instead of implementing it where I could just get the slot on the left hand side and assign the right hand side value to it, I'm essentially going to add more functionality to bind. Well, it won't be bind name anymore, because that would only work for variable lookups. And the whole point of this was to allow for anything on the left hand side. So what would that look like? So left hand side is an expression, and I don't think we need to evaluate it anymore. Instead, we'll evaluate the right hand side. And then we have the raw v. Do we need? Okay, so we attempt to apply the binary operation here, but what we'll do is we'll instead pass the operation and its location to bind. So instead, op will be an optional thing. Opassign, where is that implemented? In AST. And that's a binary op and a location. I'm just thinking, how can I reduce the amount of work that I'm going to need to do here? Well, I'll do to start with is I'll just introduce that as a local variable. And then implement the logic somewhat inline, and then I can apply it. I can update the parameters after. So what can I do here? Is this the only place that match eval expression is used in this file, I wonder? No, it's used in a bunch of places. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to update all of these spots. Let's try it here and see what happens. When we apply binary operation, we're always wanting a sourced value with no source anyway, so I might no, maybe it's actually fine the way it is. So let's go back here. So let's try this and see what happens. So that's going to be from mod Oh, yeah, I want to borrow it. Oh, thanks for the message. Yeah, I mean, it's active. I'm trying to get it off the ground, but yes, the link is expired, so I need to fix that. I would like to find out how to make a non-expiring link on Discord, but I'm not sure if it's possible. So I think I'll need to go back and update the links in general. Maybe I can do some indirection now that I think of it, so that there's a separate link that I can update whenever the link expires, so that I don't have to update all the other links. But yes, that is something that I need to fix shortly. Thanks for flagging that. Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, I still don't use Discord often enough to I still get confused with a lot of the basic mechanics of it, so I need to spend some time on that. Use of possibly uninitialized and cannot borrow as mutable. I wonder why that is. Oh, maybe because I should be doing that. Okay, so if the only issues are the uninitialized bits, then we can deal with that. There's a blue link on the... Oh, cool. I'm actually going to copy paste your suggestion and add it to my notes, so that when I take a look at it later, I'll be able to, yes, finally sort that out. Thanks very much for the help. So let's see, let's go ahead and start trying to make this an actual feature. So we have that is an operation that we might be encountering. So let's try that. So there's going to be some errors in calls to bind next that we can resolve. Let's try this. Operator location, and this is a bit of a pain. The new valref with no source. I am doing that in a couple of places. It would be a bit complicated to add it to all the exit points. I could just duplicate the function and map new valref with no source onto it. It's fine the way it is. So let's see. Val bind on line 51. And we'll say that doesn't have anything, so we'll leave the existing calls as they are. Bind 63. Oh no, that's the definition again. And let's see, 535. Bind next. Yeah, all these locations, it's only going to use none. And the only time that it's going to provide an operation is when it's directly called from bind next in mod. Just eking under the line limit here. So let's see, bind, what will it usually do? It'll usually pass context. Where is context coming from? Oh no, I would be doing bind name normally. I guess I need context, scopes, new hash set. Left hand side, right hand side. So the right hand side is going to be the right hand side value. We're going to do operator and operator location, and we'll try that. Hi Beast, welcome to the channel. This is Rust that I'm using here. It's quite colorful. But I wouldn't say that I am that good at Rust yet. I know enough to get by. The types can still throw me for a loop quite a lot of the time. So let's see, hash set not found in this context. I would like if I didn't have to import anything else. Yeah, I would say that even though I'm still not as good at Rust as I would like to be, it is certainly the closest to what I would say my ideal programming language would be. Now, having said that, I feel like it does take me a lot longer to write Rust programs than it does to write them in the likes of Go, which is what I use for kind of more practical projects if I really want to get stuff done. But Rust is what I do my hobby stuff in, because I actually enjoy what I can do with Rust and the protections it affords you. So yes, bind next at the moment is private, so let's go ahead and make that public. So let's see, line 229, we're getting there. Let's try that. I might have to do the same on operator, do I? Wonder why or where the location for the left hand side will be passed. Anyway, I can probably clone that to get past that hurdle at least. Yeah, an expression already contains the location, so I actually don't need left hand side location at all, and I potentially never did. Interesting. So I'm gonna have to edit the parser, which is a big pain. Not because it's difficult, but because recompiling the parser could potentially take a number of minutes. Yeah, so that is a good signal that the integer incrementing isn't implemented, which makes sense because we haven't implemented it at all. So let's see. Bind next name. So what's going wrong here? I will need to implement this in such a way that I first retrieve the variable from the scope and then I can assign it back in. Yeah, this is such a seemingly simple language construct, but it is so finicky in how it gets implemented. Thanks for the question, Beast JB. So it's intended, so this kind of core language is intended to be a research-based language focused on just playing around with different programming language ideas, more or less. And so it basically has a bunch of typical language constructs, such as, for example, list and object destructuring, lists, objects, loops. It's kind of property, or what's it called, prototype based in the Self and JavaScript style. And the idea is it will just be, like I say, a test bed for different language ideas, but will then be used as the basis for a future language called Ash, which is intended to be an alternative to Bash programming that keeps the ergonomics of Bash, but makes it a little smoother to use. It should be a bit more familiar to or programmers who are used to C style languages, and hopefully a bit smoother around the number of rough edge cases that Bash kind of has when you stray off the happy path. At least that's the idea so far anyway. So let's see, we have scopes assign, so I might have to do a scope get first, which makes sense. So we'll do if let sum, and we're going to have to take the operator here as well, the binary operation. And we're going to have to do a check here if binary operation. So let's see, if let sum operator and operator location is equal to op, then we're going to attempt to do this. So we have scopes get v, and if we, so we'll have undefined down here as well. That will be raw v and RHS value. Yeah, I'm gonna have to, I guess, yeah, so I'll terminate that. The CPU is still running on full, which suggests that the running processes are doing busy loops. Okay, so it looks like my hard drive is after filling up, I think, with streaming videos. So I might actually need to I guess, will I pause the stream? I'm very curious to see where this goes. I guess, yeah, I'll just lose a bit of the stream when I'm uploading it again. But that is just the way it is. I want to at least wonder why those only they get killed when... Oh, it's because... Okay. So let's try that again. And that's going to take a while to parse. But meanwhile, this... So how many of those do I need to update? That's 3 spots, so that should be all right. Oh, all of my discs are filling up. That is... Okay, I'm gonna have to take a quick pause there in just a moment. Cool, so we have a little more space again. Okay, and we can save the file. So let's take a look there. 3, 2, 6. Expected string, found that. So let's give that a go. Oh no, that was the wrong thing. So found that kind of, can I do that? Cool, so let's try this. I'm really very frustrated in a way, in terms of how complicated the binary operation has made it. Okay, this is interesting. So we've got cannot bind to an integer literal. We also have a panic, which is surprising. Or, oh no, it's not a panic, it's just, I'm not sure why that's being printed out. It's just that the expected error isn't what we expected. Well, at least the loops are now finishing correctly. So let's take a look at what's going wrong here. We are getting cannot bind to an integer literal, but we're expecting the left hand side to say the left hand side must be a variable. So that's fairly straightforward. I think there's nothing too sinister there. So hopefully that will get resolved fairly quickly at the start of the next stream. With that said, I guess today's stream has gone on a lot longer than I expected, but I also got a lot further than I expected. So that's looking pretty well and bodes pretty well for the next episode of this stream. And yeah, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone who is chatting in today. It was really nice to talk to you all and get different insights and feedback and help throughout the stream. So yeah, looking forward to chatting to you all again, and to everyone who watches the stream in general, just thanks for checking out, and yeah, take care of yourselves and have a good day.